Welcome to Echoes of History. Here, we uncover the real causes behind the rise and fall of empires. Rome began as a small Latin city on the banks of the Tiber River. Facing the strategic Tyrrhenian Sea, for centuries it was an underdog, a minor power struggling for survival against more established and powerful neighbors like the Etruscans and the Samnites. Its early history was one of constant, grinding warfare merely to exist. But by the middle of the 3rd century BCE, a profound transformation had occurred. The small city-state had defied all expectations. Rome had conquered and unified all of Italy by 265 BCE. This era of conquest marks a clear departure from Rome's myth-shrouded origins of Romulus and Remus. We are no longer in the realm of legend or embellished tradition. The wars Rome waged against formidable powers like Carthage in the Punic Wars, the successor kingdoms of Macedonia, and the vast Seleucid Empire under Antiochus the Great were not tales told by later generations. They were documented in real time by contemporary Roman chroniclers and, crucially, by astute Greek historians who witnessed Rome's ascent firsthand. Among these critical observers was Polybius, a Greek historian who lived through this period of explosive Roman expansion. His detailed accounts, which meticulously analyzed the sources of Roman power, later became a foundational source for the great Roman historian Livy. Thanks to them, we possess a reliable and detailed understanding of Rome, its incredible metamorphosis from a regional player into a world power. Rome was no longer just a city defending its walls. It was an expansionist force preparing to project its power across the known world. Its gaze was now fixed on the entire Mediterranean basin. The newly unified Italian peninsula became the bedrock of Rome's imperial ambition. Its vast manpower reserves supplied the legions with soldiers hardened by generations of relentless warfare. Its political system, forged in the crucible of internal and external conflict, was a model of discipline and ruthless efficiency. Its ambition, once limited to survival, had become boundless. Rome was a society organized for conquest, driven by an insatiable hunger for glory and dominion. Rome stood at the edge of empire. For more than 100 years, Rome lived in almost continuous war. At first glance, Rome's internal life seemed unchanged. The rhythms of the city, the debates in the forum, the religious festivals, they all appeared to carry on as they had for generations. Political debates slowed, their urgency overshadowed by news from distant fronts. Major reforms disappeared from public discourse, replaced by discussions of military campaigns and triumphs. The Roman people were consumed by foreign conflicts, their attention fixed on the ever-expanding frontiers of their world. The daily struggles and triumphs of Roman citizens seemed small in comparison to the grand drama unfolding on the world stage. The city's pulse beat in time with the marching of its legions, and the fate of faraway kingdoms held more sway than local politics. It was an era where the external world pressed in, demanding the full attention and resources of the Republic. Earlier class struggles had already been settled. The long, bitter conflicts between patricians and plebeians had, for the most part, found resolution, creating a sense of internal harmony. Future divisions, the deep, irreconcilable fissures that would later tear the Republic apart, had not yet appeared. From the outside, and even to many within, Rome looked stable. The foundations of the Republic, forged through centuries of compromise and conflict, seemed unshakable. The political machinery, though sometimes strained, continued to function. The laws were respected, the institutions honored. There was a prevailing belief in the resilience of the Roman way of life, a confidence that it could withstand any external pressure. Rome appeared as a monolithic entity, united in purpose and secure in its identity. But this stability was an illusion. Beneath the surface of apparent calm, powerful and transformative currents were at work, slowly and silently eroding the very foundations of the Republic. The relentless pace of warfare was not just an external activity. It was a force that was reshaping Roman society from the inside out. The traditional structures of power, the long-held values, and the economic basis of the state were all being fundamentally altered by the demands and consequences of perpetual conflict. What seemed like a period of focused, outward-looking strength was, in reality, a period of profound and unseen internal change. The Republic was being hollowed out, even as its borders expanded. The image of unwavering strength masked a growing vulnerability. Constant war changed everything. The scale and duration of the campaigns created a new kind of military leader. Generals gained fame on a level previously unimaginable. Their names celebrated in triumphs and their deeds recounted in households across Italy. This fame translated directly into political power, creating figures who could command immense personal loyalty. Armies, spending years under the command of a single general in foreign lands, became loyal to their commanders rather than the state. The bond between soldier and general, forged in battle and sustained by promises of land and spoils, began to supersede the soldier's allegiance to the Senate and people of Rome. Simultaneously, unprecedented wealth from conquered lands flooded into the capital. Gold, silver, slaves, and art from across the Mediterranean poured into Rome, enriching a select few and creating vast new disparities in wealth that destabilized the traditional social order. Rome fought Carthage in the west, a titanic struggle for control of the Mediterranean that defined a generation. It confronted the sophisticated Hellenistic kingdom of Macedonia in the east. Clashing with the heirs of Alexander the Great, it engaged with the powerful kings of Asia, extending its influence into the wealthy and ancient lands of the Near East. Each victory, each new province annexed, expanded Roman territory and its problems. Governing a vast, multicultural dominion required a new kind of administration, one the old city-state model was ill-equipped to provide. The challenges of provincial management, tax collection, and military deployment on a permanent, empire-wide basis strained the republican system to its breaking point. Success brought with it the seeds of crisis. The Republic was becoming an empire without admitting it. The institutions designed to govern a city were now responsible for a world. The annual magistracies, the citizen assemblies, the deliberative Senate all were struggling to adapt to the new reality of imperial power. The transformation was not a conscious choice or a planned project. It was the incremental and inevitable result of a century of military success. Rome was acquiring the characteristics of an empire-standing professional army, vast overseas territories, and a ruling class enriched by conquest, while still clinging to the language and ideals of its republican past. This deep contradiction between what Rome was and what it claimed to be created a profound and lasting tension. This century of war quietly marked the beginning of the end of Rome's ancient political balance. The delicate equilibrium between the Senate, the magistrates, and the people, which had been the hallmark of the Republic, was irrevocably broken. The new forces unleashed by constant warfare, the power of generals, the loyalty of armies, and the corrupting influence of immense wealth would soon tear the old system apart, paving the way for civil war and the rise of the emperors. The very wars that made Rome the master of the Mediterranean were the same wars that would ultimately destroy the Republic itself. Outwardly, Genghis Khan's death marked the end of an era. In reality, it was just the beginning of the Mongol Empire's true form. Mongol dominion now stretched from the Pacific coast of China in the east to the Caspian Sea in the west. A vast network of conquered peoples, from Persians and Slavs to Koreans and Chinese, lived under the authority of the Great Khan. They had forged an empire that dwarfed any that had come before it, uniting disparate lands under a single rule. The Mongols called it the Yik Mongol Ulus, the Great Mongol State. But the nomadic traditions and personal loyalties that built this empire were designed for the steppe, not for governing settled civilizations across continents. The sheer scale of their conquests presented unprecedented challenges. Administration became a colossal task. Far-flung territories like Persia and Russia were months away by horseback. The diverse cultures of their subjects, from the sophisticated urban centers of China to the agricultural heartlands of Khwarezmia, demanded different approaches. As the empire grew, the simple Mongol laws proved inadequate, and the temptation of wealth led to internal rivalries and power struggles among Genghis's descendants. The traditional nomadic values of austerity and loyalty began to erode in the face of immense power and riches. Unimaginable wealth flowed into the Mongol heartland, fundamentally altering their society. Power, once distributed among tribal chieftains loyal to the Great Khan, became concentrated in the hands of the four main branches of the Genghise dynasty, each ruling a vast territory known as an ulus, or khanate. The collaborative spirit of the early conquests gave way to dynastic ambition and jealousy. As the sons and grandsons of Genghis Khan established their own courts and adopted the customs of the peoples they ruled, the unity of the Mongol state began to fracture. The Mongols ruled the largest contiguous land empire in history, but they could no longer rule it as one people. The Angevin Empire's expansion brought glory, wealth, and control, but also deep instability. As the empire grew, unity fractured. Feudal loyalties lost meaning. Oaths could no longer bind ambition. The vast collection of lands, stretching from the misty hills of Scotland to the sun-scorched peaks of the Pyrenees, was a mosaic held together by a single, powerful dynasty. But this personal union was fragile, a colossal structure built on the shifting sands of inheritance and conquest. When a weak king inherited the throne, the entire edifice began to tremble. The ancient feudal constitution was not suited for ruling a divided cross-channel empire. The network of personal allegiances and customary laws that had worked for smaller duchies and counties buckled under the weight of an international dominion. The King of England was also the Duke of Normandy, the Count of Anjou, and the Duke of Aquitaine, vassal to the King of France for his continental lands, yet his sovereign equal in England. This inherent contradiction created a political labyrinth where loyalty was a commodity and betrayal a strategy. The Angevin kings had conquered foreign lands, but they failed to reform the system itself. They relied on sheer force of will, military might, and a relentless, peripatetic court that constantly moved to project power. But this was not governance. It was crisis management. The administrative innovations, like the English Exchequer, were brilliant but insufficient to bridge the deep cultural and political divides between England and the continent. The empire was a personal project, not a unified state. It was an empire of one man, not of one people. When that man faltered, the project was doomed. Civil conflict became inevitable. Strong men rose. Philip II of France, a patient and ruthless strategist, saw the weakness at the heart of the Angevin behemoth. He was not merely a rival king, he was the embodiment of a new, centralized royal power, a force that sought to transform France from a patchwork of feudal domains into a unified kingdom. He expertly exploited the legal complexities of feudalism, summoning King John as his vassal to answer for grievances, knowing it was a demand John could never truly accept. The struggle was not just over castles and fields, it was a battle of political futures. On one side stood the old world of sprawling, personal empires held by dynastic rights. On the other, the nascent idea of the nation-state, defined by territory, law, and a centralized crown. The Angevin Empire, for all its power, was a relic of a dying age. John's frantic campaigns, his crushing taxes on the English barons, and his desperate alliances were the death throes of a system that had reached its limit. The path toward the end of the empire was now clear. At the Battle of Bouvines in 1214, the fate of this world was sealed. Philip's decisive victory was not just a military triumph, it was a political earthquake. It shattered the Angevin holdings on the continent and broke the back of King John's authority. The Angevin dream of a cross-channel empire died on that field. The barons of England, pushed to their limits by John's tyranny and military failure, rose in rebellion. The result was Magna Carta, a document that, while born of aristocratic self-interest, laid the first stone on the long road to constitutional monarchy and the rule of law. The Angevin Empire mastered a vast European territory. But in doing so, it created the very crisis that destroyed it. Yet, the Angevin legacy survived. Its legal innovations, its administrative systems, and the very conflict it provoked still shape the modern world. The common law of England, the foundation of legal systems for hundreds of millions, was forged in the courts of Angevin kings. The clash between crown and nobility that culminated in Magna Carta set a precedent for limiting sovereign power that echoes in constitutions across the globe. From the ruins of one empire, the seeds of two distinct nations, England and France, took firm root. The echoes of 1214 are still with us. If you want to understand history beyond stories, subscribe to Echoes of History, because every empire leaves echoes behind.